Hey, this is Mr. Anderson, and you are listening to 2 out of 3 Falls.
Yeah, what up? You know, it's Peter Rosenberg, Hot 97, ESPN, WWE Network, GP Podcast, talking all things wrestling with my man Randy Cruz, the Cruise Control Podcast.
You're listening to Cruise Control with Randy Cruz. This is the voice of the New World Order. NWO.
Graham Matthews, Bleacher Report, Fan-Sided, Daily DDT. My man, how you doing?
Doing great, Randy. How about yourself?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. You can find Graham on Twitter at WrestleRants. You can find me at Randy J. Cruz, Randy, the letter JCRUZ. Find the 2 out of 3 Falls podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.com/Cruise Control Podcast. Go ahead, download, rate, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Show some love and support to the show. So, Graham, you know, quite a few things to bring up in the world of professional wrestling this past week. And I think I'm going to start with I noticed it's been like a Randy Orton appreciation kind of week going on. I think 20 years since he debuted in the company. It makes me feel fucking old. Because I recall him coming up on SmackDown and OVW, and you fast forward 20 years later, a legend killer, the Viper, and this multiple-time champion, Hall of Famer. And it was good to see, you know, John Cena on Twitter say some nice things, Triple H, Ric Flair, the whole 9 yards. And it got me thinking, like, this is a good conversation to have because, you know, we look at Randy Orton as a guy who's great in the ring, on the microphone. You know, people are going to go back and forth where they rank him all the time from a general consensus or where they rank him. And then, you know what? I'll start there. For you, Graham Matthews, where do you, on your list, where do you have Randy Orton all time, ranking wise? Where do you? I don't need a specific number. Yeah. But what kind of bracket do you have him in?
I mean, it's hard to say because I feel like if I say top 10, then people might think, oh, then he's better than Randy Savage or something. I mean, I think top 10 would be appropriate. I don't think he's top 5. I really don't think he's one of the greatest of all time as far as that goes. I think people kind of overuse the GOAT thing as a joke, and I get that. I say it all the time too. I don't think he's a top 5er. I would probably put him in top 10, like maybe 10 or 9.
In your top 10?
Yeah, as far as best, I'm not saying favorite. You know, I'm not saying my favorite wrestlers of all time. That would be a totally different list altogether. But as far as, like, if you were to ask me, and I have, to put together a list of, like, the greatest the thing is, are we talking wrestlers? Are we talking performers? Are we talking superstars, draws, champions? There's a lot of different things you can go off of as far as what the criteria is exactly. Regardless of what the category is, I would still probably put him 10 or 9. It definitely top 15 easily. 10 is more debatable because there's a lot sponsor more select as far as, like, you got Stone Cold in there. I would put Cena above Orton, I would think. Cena, you know, I would put, you know, like I said, Stone Cold, Rock, probably Taker in that conversation over Orton, Shawn, Brett. All of a sudden, he's down to 7 or 8, you know? So that's what I'm saying. He would, and that's not even including people like Savage and stuff like that. So probably 10 or 9, if not in the top 15 easily, I would say.
So as of right now, today, April 23rd, 2022, you have your top 5 solidified right now?
I mean, it changes, I think, all the time. But as far as, if you're asking me my top 5 greatest wrestlers, the thing is, are we talking in WWE ever? Because if we're talking like in wrestling history, like, you would have to include Ric Flair. You know, I wouldn't put him in WWE's top 5 because he was barely there, but you would probably have to put Flair ahead of Orton, obviously, Dusty ahead of Orton, Piper ahead of Orton, Sting, likely. That's debatable.
So if we're talking Bruno, WWE.
Yeah. Talking WWE. Then I would still probably put him not even in the top 5. I would probably put Hogan, Rock, in no particular order. Hogan, Rock, Stone Cold, Cena, maybe Shawn or Brett. That's the top 5, I would think. Bruno, I mean, I guess if you want to include him, I guess it depends on what we're looking for, but
yeah,
I'd put him over. I would put him
you can't put Bruno in yours because you never saw him fucking wrestle.
Well, never saw. That's what I'm saying. When you say mine, are you talking about like of all time, or are you talking about like of since I started watching? You know what I mean?
With your own eyes that you've seen from when they're at the bottom in their prime to the end of their career that you personally seen.
Yeah.
It's like me in basketball, I can't put Chamberlain and Bill Russell in my top 5 because I never saw them live.
Okay.
Not saying they're not great or belong in the general consensus top 10. They do, but for me, they won't be in mine. So for you, it's like guys that you've seen in your prime and their prime.
Well, if you're talking from that criteria, then no. I mean, you wouldn't even put, because I started getting into it after Rock and Stone Cold were gone. So that's what I'm saying. I can't even include them in that. If you're talking from the time that I started watching to modern day, which is about almost 15 years now, which isn't nearly as long as a lot of other people, obviously. But for me, he would be top 5. I mean, he was actually, I mentioned William Regal a lot as someone who kind of got me into it and someone that I was hooked on when I first started watching wrestling 15 years ago. The first match that really hooked me, it wasn't the match itself wasn't a great match, but it was just more of the idea of it or the principle of it, whatever, was William Regal against Randy Orton. So I don't really give Orton a lot of credit for also kind of getting me into wrestling when I did get into it. But he does. I mean, he's probably just as important, if not, more important than Regal in that respect, because he's always been a great heel and he's been a great foil for a lot of people. So, yeah, as far as that goes, yeah, he would be in my top 5. Orton, Triple H was still active when I first started watching, so probably Triple H, Cena, Punk, Roman in the last 10 years would probably be the top. I'm not talking favorite wrestlers. Again, there's so many different ways we can go about this, but if we're talking top 5 performers in the time I've been watching, let's say since the start of the PG era, because I started watching right before that. So if we're talking the PG era, then it would be those 5. I would say Roman, Triple H, Orton, Cena, and Punk. I think those would be my top 5.
Right.
Maybe Daniel Bryan somewhere in there as well.
I think for me, Orton would fall into, I would say, top 15.
Okay.
Who my top 5 has not changed in quite a very long time. And that's
really okay.
Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, The Rock, and Ultimate Warrior. So Warrior was the guy that really got me into watching WrestleMania 6 Hogan. I was like, I'm hooked. So that's 5. I still got Undertaker. I still got Triple H.
Yeah, you got a lot to choose from, yeah.
I got Macho Man. That's 8. I'm going to have Kurt Angle in there. I'm going to have Jericho.
Yeah, that makes sense. So he wouldn't be top Orton. 10 then. That leaves him at least out of the top 10.
At least top 15.
Well, in the top 15, he would be in there. But for you, all the names you just mentioned, that's at least 10.
Right.
Yeah.
What is the Mount Rushmore of Randy Orton matches?
That's a good question. I was actually talking about this with someone the other day. As like, the funny thing is that we were discussing this with that guy RJ. Actually, we were discussing like what his best match of all time is, because I feel like with a lot of people, you can pinpoint that is their greatest match ever. Like for example, and we can talk about him later. I know this week is Randy Orton's 20th anniversary, but today, as we record, is the 45th birthday of John Cena. He's another one who celebrates like an anniversary birthday today.
45. Wow.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So when you think about that, like when I think of Cena, his best match is either the Punk match from Money in the Bank 2011, in my opinion, or AJ Styles from SummerSlam 2016. I think those are his 2 greatest matches ever. And there's been a lot of them. I feel like there's more to choose from with Cena than there is with Orton. I feel like Orton's had a lot of very, very good matches and some great matches too, but not nearly as many classic matches as Cena. So for Orton's Mount Rushmore, the top 2 that at least come to mind no matter what are the Mick Foley match from Backlash 04. You have to include that because that made him into who he was as a main eventer.
Right.
And it's just a genuinely great match, but it was instrumental in his ascent up the card, up the roster. So that one, I would put the Christian match from SummerSlam 2011. I think that is seriously one of his greatest matches ever. For the World Heavyweight Championship, no holds barred match. They had probably one of Orton's best feuds ever, with some of the best matches, period, in 2011. So I would put that in there. As far as the other 2, the thing is that with Cena, he had a lot of very good matches, none that were like classic. The one that I would put above the rest was probably the Iron Man match they had. It was Bragging Rights 2009. It was a great match. I would likely put that in there. And then for the 4th one, I'm trying to think. Like I'm thinking singles matches too. I'm not thinking of the matches he had with Evolution against the Shield. Those were great, but that wasn't 1-on-1. I'm not thinking of the Batista Bryan triple threat from Mania 30. Because that wasn't really his match, so I can't really say that. If I'm thinking of a match from like recent years, I love the Rollins match from WrestleMania 31. I don't know if that would be in the Mount Rushmore, but I think that's one of the ones that I think of. Beyond that, I'm not really sure. Like, would you put the Edge one from WrestleMania? What was that? Not WrestleMania Backlash, but at that point, just Backlash, the greatest wrestling match of all time?
No.
I mean,
No.
I could see an argument being made. I wouldn't put it in there just because it didn't have a crowd, so that really takes away from it. And that's not the only factor, but I just think he's probably had better matches than that. So there's a lot that probably come to mind. Those are the top 4. In recent years, again, he's had a lot of very good, but not like truly classic matches, I don't think. Unless there's some I'm just not thinking of. But I think it would be those 4. Foley, Christian, Cena, and Rollins. Or Punk from Mania 27. But I don't think that's like a classic match.
I'm with you on the Foley one.
Yeah, I figured that. Maybe Taker? Any of the Taker matches, maybe?
I was just going to say Taker from 21 was up there, too.
Yeah, I could see that one being in there. I'd probably put that one over the Rollins one.
So I think it's a great question because there is no clear-cut answer. It's not like, if you say Undertaker, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're done. Triple H, we're done. Orton, 20 years of the body of work, and there is no clear-cut Mount Rushmore for him. And then that don't mean his matches weren't good. It's so many of them. So I thought about Taker from 21. I mean, you might have to consider him beating Benoit at SummerSlam 04.
Yeah, I could see that. I just don't think that was a classic match is the thing. I don't think people talk about the match. I think people more kind of talk about the moment of him winning.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't go back and rewatch that. I mean, I know it was a very good match, but I don't know if it was a classic match. That's right. The problem. I feel like with all the other people you just mentioned, you can think of Taker, Shawn Michaels. WrestleMania 25 or Shawn Michaels or them from Bad Blood. Those are his 2 greatest matches ever with the same opponent, but still you could think of those 2. Triple H, I think of The Rock immediately, the Iron Man match, one of the greatest matches of all time, or the 3 Stages of Hell match with Steve Austin in 01, I think in No Way Out or whatever. Those are like 2 that come to mind immediately. And Triple H is another one that he's had some very good matches, but not like truly classic matches. I think of the Daniel Bryan match too for Triple H from WrestleMania 30 as being one of his best matches ever, and the story they crafted and everything else. So, yeah, with Orton, it's weird. I just feel like he's had a lot of, 4.5-star matches, but not, 5-star. Not that everyone has to have a 5-star match, but especially in recent years, he's had a lot of great stuff, but not, amazing, to the point where if you can't remember, then I can't remember either. He's had a lot of disappointing matches. Like the Bray Wyatt matches were just not good. They did not have good chemistry. They just did not have good matches. He had a million matches with Sheamus. Would I put them on the level of anything he's done of all time? No. Even the matches, I think of Orton's greatest rivals, he had a lot of matches with Triple H over the course of several years. Were any of them amazing matches that we can sit here and recommend right now? Honestly, no. I don't think so. They had a match at the Rumble in 05 that wasn't great. They had a couple of steel cage matches, last man standing, all this other shit. They really weren't amazing matches. They were pretty good, but they weren't classic. I just remember them feuding. The WrestleMania 25 match sucked. I did not think that match was really that good at all. I would probably put the Taker match that you mentioned on there for sure. The WrestleMania, either 21 or the Hell in the Cell match they had. I thought either one of those matches were really good. I honestly really don't know. He's been around a lot lately. As far as with the RK Bros stuff, he's been entertaining, but he's not had a one true the AJ Styles matches he had. Some very good matches. Were they classic? I don't think so. Kane, no. I'm just trying to think. CM Punk, maybe classic.
27, no, that was pretty good too. 27.
That was a very good match. He's had good matches with Rey Mysterio over the years. Jeff Hardy from Royal Rumble 08. That's another one I think of. With Jericho, he had a couple of good matches. Not Big Show. I mean, I don't know, man. It's weird.
Brock, not even Brock.
No, that Brock match wasn't good. From 16. I think that was when I saw you, actually. I saw you at TakeOver the day before in Brooklyn. I wouldn't put that on there. It's weird.
It's tough.
It's tough. It really is. I don't really think there's a definitive list for Orton. We mentioned some of the musts. I think I think you have to put the Christian match on there because they had some of their greatest matches respectively were with each other. So I'd put the Christian match, the Foley match, the Taker match, and that last spot is kind of up for interpretation because I don't think that's really set in stone as far as what you put in that spot.
Right. So before we move on from Orton, are you a Legend Killer Orton guy? Are you a Legacy Orton guy? Are you a Viper Orton guy?
Well, I started watching around the time, the very tail end of his. I started watching when he was the WWE champion for one of the first few times, and it was the Age of Orton, as he called it at that point. And he was the WWE champion for several months, and he defended against Cena and Triple H at WrestleMania in 2008. So that's when I got into his work. And then after that, it was the Viper Orton. No, Legacy Orton was before that, as you mentioned. I think the best Orton is a Legend Killer Orton. I think RK Bro Orton right now is one of the best versions of Randy Orton ever as well, honestly. I think he's just doing fantastic right now from a character standpoint. He's never been more entertaining his entire career. But of the three that you mentioned, Legend Killer, although I didn't grow up in that era, I would choose Legend Killer. But I grew up during Legacy time, and I thought he was a great heel during that point, too. Like, he knew how to get people to hate him, and he did a great job with it. So I enjoy all incarnations. There really hasn't been a bad version of Randy Orton. Maybe also when he first turned face, around 2010, he had he was on fire. Like, the guy was getting ridiculous reactions. Like, when he won the title in Chicago and Night of Champions that year, I just remember the place losing their shit. Like, he was white hot. So that's probably one of my favorite versions of Orton. He's been boring as a babyface at times, but more often than not, Orton's character work has been better than his matches, I think. And every version of Orton's been great, I think, for the most part.
Would you bet your money that by the time Randy Orton retires and Edge retires, that we get one more incarnation of Rated RKO?
Definitely. I think especially since, Edge is heel now. Orton's a face, but that's not to say he won't turn heel on Riddle at some point. Yeah, I think so. I was a little disappointed they never even teased it, and they never actually did it when Edge first came back, but they just got right into the heel turn from Orton. But it made sense. They just wanted to jump right into it, make it more surprising. I get it. So, I would love to see another Rated RKO reunion one more time. We haven't really seen it they did a one-off about 10 years ago, but other than that, they hadn't had their full-on run since the mid-2000s, over 15 years ago. So, yeah, I would love to see another Rated RKO reunion one more time in their current incarnations.
So this week we have a new U.S. champion in theory. We have a Rhea Ripley breakup with Liv Morgan. The Rhea thing was we kind of saw it was going to happen. It was inevitable. But I guess the way they turn people, it just always the same shit. It's always again, you turn your back and I hit you from behind and stuff like that. They could have done a better job of doing that. Were you surprised the fact that they did it that same way as opposed to anything beyond different than that?
No, I figured it would play out the way that it did, but I'm fine with that. I thought the execution was fine, the match was fine, and Rhea, I think, needed the heel turn. I'm looking forward to seeing where she goes with potentially Edge and Ciampa. I think they can be a great faction. And I thought the execution was fine, and I think she needed the heel turn because she's been a babyface for so long. So it was predictable, yes, but predictability isn't always a bad thing. So I was pretty content with how it played out on Monday.
So as of right now, we still feel Rhea's going to join Edge and Priest.
I do. I know they need more heels on Raw for the women, but I feel like the timing of it, they were rumoring Rhea turning heel before she even started teasing it. The rumors for Rhea joining that stable were before, coming out of WrestleMania. It was the night of WrestleMania night 2. They didn't start teasing Rhea's heel turn until the Monday after WrestleMania. So they started right before then. So I think there is some smoke to the fire there. I don't know about Ciampa, but we haven't seen him really at all since he got called up. And it's only been a few weeks. But I think Rhea isn't a lock, but she's far more likely. And I think it'd be cool. We really don't see, for all the factions that we get in WWE, which isn't that many, virtually none of them have any women involved, ever. The only one that I can think of in the last 10 years was probably the Authority with Stephanie. But that's it. I really can't think of many other female. Well, we've had female stables, but male stables with a female in there, that makes sense. And we really haven't had that at all. So I would love for it to be Rhea with Edge and Priest. And I think that might be coming at some point, hopefully.
And I wonder how they do it. I wonder do they recruit her? Does she go to them? That's the storytelling part that we're going to be waiting to watch. If you were the writer, how would you connect Rhea with Edge and Priest all of a sudden? How would you put that together?
I would like to see Edge and Priest recruit her. I think Priest joined Edge without Edge knowing. I think that was the storyline explanation. I thought the explanation they provided on Monday's Raw for why Priest joined Edge was actually really well done, with Edge mentioning, he was overshadowed by Bad Bunny last year. He got all the credit and Priest didn't. Yeah. And that's true. That is very true. So them utilizing that a year later for this heel turn for Priest was perfect. I thought that was great. I mean, some of it's a little hokey, like Edge saying, oh, you turned your back on me after 2 years. They never turn their back on Edge. I mean, there's people online that will complain about Edge, but the reactions were overwhelmingly positive. And Priest was getting great reactions as a face until WWE booked him to look like a loser. So that's also not really technically true, But with that being said, as far as what they could do with Rhea, I think it'd be cool if they had them recruit her. I think we haven't really seen that yet. They could see that she's down on her luck and kind of try to manipulate her into joining their faction. She could join on her own, but that would require AJ. Like, why would she join them? As far as it's not like AJ has this female counterpart on the show and she's going to come to attack her. There really isn't any of that. It would make more sense, I think, if they were like, hey, we need more numbers on our side, so let's recruit Rhea Ripley. I think that would just make more sense.
Yeah. We have a new U.S. champion, your boy Theory. I don't know what the deal is with Finn Balor. I don't know the fucking deal. I don't know. They're making him lose. He's the champion. He don't defend it. Every time he wrestles, he loses. Just never a good match. Between him and being a champion. I like Theory. You know me. I always like the bad guys that have character, who have swag and attitude, just being an asshole.
Yeah.
Potentially be world champion, down the road. Were you shocked that Balor dropped the belt to Theory so quick?
No, I figured Theory would win it because they've had Theory pin Balor at least 2 or 3 times in recent weeks, including singles matches, tag team matches. I know Theory lost to McAfee at Mania, but Theory has been pretty prominently pushed lately alongside Vince with this whole connection they've had lately, so it makes sense. I'm glad they put the belt on Theory. I think he's a star on the rise, and listen, if they're going to push him, you might as well give him the fucking title. They clearly did not give a shit about Finn Balor. The Balor thing was merely to get the belt off of Priest and to put it on Theory. He was the definition of a transitional paper champion. And that's a shame because Balor is great, but they really have not done anything with Balor since he came back to the main roster. We talk about how much they need stars. Balor can be one of those guys that they actually utilized him in that role. I mean, since he came back last summer, he called out Roman Reigns for SummerSlam, and then Cena signed the contract instead. Completely stupid angle. So Balor had his Universal title match robbed at SummerSlam. He ended up going for the title after that on 2 different occasions. He faced Roman on SmackDown, and he lost. And then they did the match at Extreme Rules, and he lost again as the Demon. The Demon lost his first match at that Extreme Rules pay-per-view. He was in King of the Ring. He lost that to Xavier Woods, who isn't even the king anymore. He won the United States Championship, lost it within 6 weeks, wasn't in the Rumble, wasn't at WrestleMania. I mean, this guy's stock has never been lower. I mean, I could honestly see him either leaving on his own or getting released at some point. And it sounds weird to say about Balor because people still really like him, despite the fact he's been booked like a chump in the last 6 months, 7-8 months. But man, he's had a real fall from grace, even from where he was in NXT, where he was killing it every single week as champion. And when he wasn't champion, it's weird, man. It really is. So I'm not going to say, oh, how dare they take the belt off of Balor? Because I wasn't really super high on them giving him the belt to begin with. It's like the Ricochet thing. Ricochet's been champion. He really hasn't been booked all that great either. He's kind of an afterthought as champion. They're not really focal points. It goes back to WWE and how they don't give a shit about their mid-card titles. They mean absolutely nothing right now. So with Balor, it would be nice if they got him back to the main event next. He could have been coming out of NXT with the Prince Balor gimmick. They just didn't. They decided to not go in that direction, and he's been a stepping stone ever since. And I know the guy's 40, and it's oh, let's write him off. I know at one point there was a report that they looked at him as the new Jeff Hardy. Before Jeff Hardy left, he was kind of a stepping stone too. But the thing is that Hardy's older than Balor, but if Balor and Hardy are still popular, dude, they're still incredible. There is really no reason when you think about it why these guys should be over as over as they are. I mean, they're booked like losers. They really should not be over, but they are in spite of the booking. If they're over, then capitalize on that and milk it for all it's worth before you make them like a Shelton Benjamin type thing. I get that. But with someone like Hardy and Balor, if they're still over, then do something with them. Right. It doesn't make any sense to me.
So as you're talking, 2 things popped in my head. And you know how I think.
Yeah.
Remind me, since Finn Balor has been on the main roster, has he ever been heel?
No, I think he actually pitched to be heel and they turned it down, I heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Point number 2. We mentioned Edge and Priest, and there's rumors that Ciampa might be involved or might not be involved. Depends on if they need like a muscle guy to be a part of the group.
Yeah.
In the event Ciampa is not in this group,
Mm-hmm.
does a guy like Finn Balor need to be in that kind of group because his stock is going low? You said Damian Priest stock was going low. Could Finn Balor be that guy that needs the Edge Damian Priest group to join to kind of uplift where he's going?
Yeah,
Could
I
you
don't think
see Balor in that mix?
the thing is that he's not like a perfect fit as far as like I would pick him automatically. If he was being booked better, then no. But the problem is that he's at a point now where he's just a complete loser as far as the booking is concerned. So really, when you ask yourself, why the hell not? Just do it. I mean, there really is no harm in it. It's not like we're suggesting that they make him into a clown character. Like all you're suggesting is to turn him heel, which I don't think they want to do. Otherwise, they would have done it already. Not to say they won't. I just don't think it's likely. But at this point, why not? I mean, he's never been lower on the card. He's been on main event a few times in recent months, at least once. Why not? I think Ciampa would be a better fit because Ciampa's more directionless on his own without a heel turn and without joining that group. He might be on main event even more than Balor will be.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say no to that just because at least it would give Balor something to do, which he does not have right now.
Right, and I would understand if fans would be like, no, Ciampa would need him more. He's more the up-and-coming guy. Finn Balor's already established. He's been on the main roster for 5-6 years already. You want to give that opportunity to somebody else as opposed to somebody who's been there for quite some time. So I do kind of see why they want Ciampa and not Balor. But Balor needs something right now, and that could be it.
It would be it. I would still put Ciampa in there, like you said, for the reason you mentioned, but.
Put them both. Fuck it, put them both.
Hey, put them both. I mean, it wouldn't hurt, right? Why not? So, I mean, yeah, you don't make any. You're not lying. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. I did listen when I see Ronda and Charlotte do the whole contract signing. You know how I feel about contract signings.
Yeah,
it's the same shit over and over.
No, it's the same thing all the time. Yeah,
they don't do no weigh-ins, no UFC type shit to make it more real. But I told you last week I like the intrigue of this I Quit match with Ronda and Charlotte. It can go either way, but I think Ronda's going to win, which could set up the Hell in a Cell the following month.
Yeah.
I don't see a way where Charlotte could win that match. I know she got the WrestleMania W, and it has to go Ronda's way. I don't see how you could win. How Ronda could win the match without winning the title. She has to win.
Yeah, you can't do that. There's no DQs. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So you could do the fucking send off in Hell in a Cell. I think if any Hell in a Cell cage matches are going to happen at that event, it could be Ronda Charlotte 3. I don't see Cody and Seth going in there. I could see AJ Styles going there though.
Maybe so I would be fine with either one, really, at this point.
Yeah, if AJ wins at Backlash, it's 1-1.
Yes,
and I think that could be
same thing with Seth and Cody. I mean, if Seth could win, it would be 1-1.
Well, we ain't doing no 3 Hell in a Cell matches.
No, I don't think so. But I'm glad. The bottom line is that it should be Charlotte and Ronda. Yeah. I would listen. We're traditionalists here, both of us. I would say. Mm-hmm. One, there shouldn't be any Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, but we say that every year, so we'll save ourselves sounding like a broken record.
True.
If there is going to be a show, being a traditionalist, I would prefer there only be one. There doesn't even need to be 2. But if we're going to do 2, because they usually do 2, Charlotte and Ronda most definitely. They usually have 1 women's and 1 men's. Ronda and Charlotte most definitely, and one of the 2 that you mentioned. It really doesn't matter to me at this current point because both feuds are kind of on the same level. It absolutely should not be whatever Roman's doing at that show. Even if Roman has an opponent for WrestleMania Backlash, which it's looking like he might based on spoilers for next week, that match should not be inside Hell in a Cell because it's going to have only like a month-long build. So the other match, as you mentioned, doesn't really matter to me at this current point. I might have a different answer in 2 or 3 weeks from now. At this current point, I think it should not be anything else but those 3 matches that you mentioned.
I agree. I mean, I would prefer 2.
Yeah, definitely not 3. Definitely not 3. Just two of those 3, I think, would be good. And Charlotte and Ronda should be one of them.
I think at some point in time we got to have a show and go through every Hell in a Cell match And then we got to pick the top 10 matches that should never been in fucking Hell in a Cell.
I mean, I can tell you more than 10. It's probably closer to 20. I mean, we've been having this
20?
Hell in a Cell pay-per-view since 2009, dude. They've been doing 2 or 3 Hell in a Cell matches at the show for almost 15 years. So that's like, what's 2 times 15? Or, well, okay, since 2009. Like about 13 installments since 2009. 13 times at least 2 is 26. That's 26 matches inside Hell in a Cell, and that's not even counting the ones that were WrestleMania in recent years or at other shows. You know, so yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, a lot of those did not belong inside the Cell for sure.
Okay, just to have fun, I have a little time to kill. So okay. they because I have one more point and then we'll wrap up. So they started the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, as you mentioned, in 2009.
October of 2009, yeah.
So the first one, they had 3 matches in Hell in a Cell. They had Taker and CM Punk for the World Heavyweight Championship.
They had DX and Legacy, and they had Cena and Orton
for the world title.
Yes.
And then 2010,
Sheamus and I think it was Orton, and they had Taker and Kane.
Both for the championships.
Both for titles. 2011, same thing. 2 title matches. It was Punk, Cena, and Del Rio, and Randy Orton and Mark Henry, both title matches. Neither of them should have been inside Hell in the Cell.
All right, since you don't need me, 2012.
2012 was just Punk and Ryback inside the Cell. Definitely did not need the Cell stipulation.
Okay, we finally found one that did not deserve Hell in a Cell. 2013.
Well, the other 2, the other ones from 2011 didn't need it either. But 2013, Punk and Ryback again inside the Cell. It was a handicap Hell in a Cell match. Did not need the Cell, most definitely. Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton in the main event for the WWE Championship. Did not need the Cell because they had another match, I think, after. Or maybe it didn't. Now, that match was fine inside the Cell because they had a couple matches by that point.
Yeah, with Shawn Michaels as referee.
Yeah, and Shawn Michaels turned heel and they never went anywhere. That was it. I think Bryan attacked him the next day and that was it.
All right, then we had 2014.
2014, they had Cena and Orton again inside the Cell. Did not need the Cell stipulation. That was a completely random number 1 contenders match. And then they had Ambrose and Rollins, which actually deserved the stipulation that year in the main event.
I remember that.
2015, they had Brock and Taker, which deserved the Cell stipulation because that was a great main event, I remember. And they also had not Rollins and Kane. Don't tell me what it was. Oh, it was Roman and Bray Wyatt inside the Cell. Opened the show, very good match. That was fine inside the stipulation because that was inside the Cell because that had been going on for long enough. We get to 2016.
Yes, sir.
3 Hell in the Cell matches. They had Charlotte and Sasha, which was cool inside the Cell. It was a good match, but they continued the feud anyway, and the match wasn't overly good, so that one can go either way. Roman and Rusev did not need the Cell stipulation at all.
For the U.S. title.
For the U.S. title, exactly. Just a completely forgettable match. Wow. And Rollins and Owens had a pretty good Cell match, but Jericho interfered anyway. So what was the point of the stipulation? That was a complete waste too. So whatever. 2017, Shane and Owens. Maybe because the feud was going on for a while. Not an overly exciting match. And they also had the New Day Usos match, which was amazing. So that was fine inside the Cell.
Okay, explain to me a false count anywhere Hell in a Cell match. I mean, where else can you fucking go inside Hell in a Cell?
So Owens and Shane, they went on top the Cell, and then Shane went. They added that stipulation because Shane went flying off the Cell. Owens moved because Sammy turned heel that night, helped Owens, and then Owens pinned Shane outside the Cell as opposed to bringing him in the ring. So that's what happened. So yeah, the match was whatever. But then
we had 2018.
2018, Randy Orton, Jeff Hardy, good match inside the Cell. I think that was fine, and that feud was going on for a while. I was okay with that. And then they also had...
Oh, boy. I remember this shit.
It wasn't Samoa Joe and AJ Styles. Oh, the Roman and Braun match was awful. That absolutely did not need the Cell.
In a no contest with Mick Foley as referee.
That was a complete shit show. Oh, my God. No, most definitely did not need that.
And this was... Braun's Money in the Bank cash-in match.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. That was terrible. That was very stupid.
2019.
can't not mention Rollins and Fiend from 2019. That was one of the worst matches of all time. Obviously did not need the stipulation, but Sasha and Becky had a great cell match earlier in the show for the Raw Women's Championship.
Right.
Didn't exactly need the stipulation, but it ended up being one of the better, probably the best women's Hell in the Cell match ever. Until 2020 with Banks and Bayley also inside the cell. Great match. Sasha finally winning the SmackDown Women's Championship. And Drew and Randy had a Hell in the Cell match that night. And I think they continued their feud anyway, too. So the stipulation was also completely pointless. And that wasn't overly a good match either. And then finally last year, they had Banks and Bayley inside the cell. And they had
Bianca.
Oh, not Banks and Bayley. Yeah, Bianca and Bayley inside the cell. And they had Drew and Bobby for the WWE title. So that's all of them. Don't ask me how I know all of that.
So on an average, you're getting at least two Hell in a Cell matches per show.
Yeah, 2009 and 2016 had 3, and 2012 had 1. Those are the only differences.
So, doing spoiler, everybody, don't be surprised if you get 3 Hell in a Cell matches with Cody, Seth,
yeah, we could,
Ronda, Charlotte, and fucking Edge and AJ Styles. But if you get 2, that'll be great.
It's definitely possible that we get 3. I hope not, but it's possible.
Last point. Well, two quick things. So Backlash right now has Edge and AJ, RK Bro, Usos, Charlotte, Ronda, and Cody and Seth. So only 4 on the card. No Roman yet. He might have a match that we don't know about right now. But I like the card. I think it's again, it's basically rematches from WrestleMania.
But they make sense though, so I'm fine with that.
All of them, yeah, all of them. So I like where that card is going. It should be interesting. Last point, Stone Cold said, "Never say never." We thought it was a wrap at WrestleMania 38. Came back, he fought. He was on both nights in Texas, and then you look at LA the following year. For next year, do I see him wrestling? No. Do I see him involved in some capacity? Yeah, but once you throw out that never say never, it's like, oh, okay, all right. So whatever he's going to be involved in to get back in the ring, it's got to be somebody from his time, his era. I don't know what it is. Would you be happy to see Stone Cold wrestle again one more time next year being in LA, or you feel like what you got at 38 as a fan was like, that's a nice bookend to the book?
It wasn't just nice. I thought it was perfect. I really thought everything that you could have asked for from that match. First of all, it was a match. They went almost 15 minutes. It was a brawl. The crowd was into it. Owens was perfect. He took bumps. It was in Dallas. It was the main event of WrestleMania. What more could you even ask for? I mean, it was perfect. So I wouldn't tarnish that.
That's what you asked for.
Oh my God, people are going to chant one more match.
You still got it.
I mean, not that I would be like, oh man, I wouldn't be upset, but I would be disappointed. It's like the Shawn thing. He ended his career on such a good note. Unless he was coming back for something so worthwhile years later. The problem with Steve, though, is that he's not coming back 10 years from now. This is it. He ain't coming back another 5-10 years from now. The guy's almost 60 as it is. Shawn was a lot younger when he initially retired, and he came back within 8 years. Steve retired 20 years ago. 20 years ago when he's coming back now. So
19, yeah.
Yeah, he ain't waiting another 5 years. He might be in a wheelchair at that point. So I don't see that happening. But no, I don't want to see another match. I think he could, depending on the situation and the opponent. I don't think it's impossible. I just don't think it's necessary. And people would get their hopes up. With the match at Mania, they didn't advertise it as a match. So people didn't have their hopes up. If you advertise that as the main event of Mania and we got what we got, people might be upset because it wasn't like this classic match. It was an entertaining brawl. That wasn't like a main event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the fact that it kind of came out of nowhere, I thought they handled it perfectly. I was skeptical coming into the show as far as how they were handling it. But what they did instead was perfect, actually. So I wouldn't tarnish that. I wouldn't put him in the ring again for something like that.
So we don't have to answer it now. I'm going to let you go. But I'm leaving a cliffhanger for next week. Is it easier? We mentioned Orton's Mount Rushmore of matches. Is it easier for Stone Cold?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can answer it now if you want to, or we can wait till next week. But I definitely think it would be. Steve Austin is definitely more obvious.
I got 2 in my head right now. I got 2 automatic.
I mean, most definitely. I think I could probably tell you 3. So, in my opinion, but Yeah, more than Orton. Orton's wasn't automatic. We kind of had to think about that. And even those, the ones that we picked were kind of debatable.
So for those who are watching the show or listening, if you got any feedback on Orton's Mount Rushmore of matches, hit us up on Twitter. WrestleRant on Twitter, Randy J. Cruz on Twitter and IG. Find the podcast on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube.com/Cruise Control Podcast. Great work for Graham on Bleacher Report and fan-sided Daily DDT. My man, thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy. Always appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you next week.
All right, man. Take it easy.
See you, brother.